everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm the empty husk that used to house the person named Jake.
And welcome to Hugo and Jake. Today we're continuing our, let's call it critical reading of Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. Today we begin rule number 4, and that rule is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And again, like most chapter titles, decent to start out with. It's the content within the chapter that makes my eyebrows raise.
So I got a comment recently on Twitter from a dissenter of our work here.
Sure.
Underneath a link to the video in which we read the book, someone said, "You didn't even read the book." I feel like maybe you didn't watch the video.
Anyway.
So, we also have an elephant. There's an elephant over there. It's irrelevant.
So, to start with...
So fair warning, the beginning of this chapter was boring. Very boring. And for a little while there, I thought we weren't gonna... It was like we were in a dark wood, right?
Sure.
And we're trying to... We could see the moonlight above us, and we're trying to get to civilization from the center of this forest. But really, when you get out, you just found an incel telling you about Jesus at the end of the forest, and he's unwilling to help you out of the to civilization. So this is the dark forest part of this metaphor.
This chapter, more than any of the others we've read thus far, very much presents itself when you read it as a person who knew he was writing a self-help book and said, "Okay, I don't really know what to do for this particular rule, so I guess I'll Google general self-help advice."
So what's the rule? What's the rule?
Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Right.
Basically, compare yourself to you in the past.
Again, as with all these chapters, that sentence in general makes a decent bumper sticker.
Sure.
That's a pretty decent title to a blog post.
Fine.
And it reads as such, except one with like a word limit that needs to be reached.
The problem is, for most of the chapter, until he gets to the part he really wants to talk about, which is religion, he essentially just repeats himself over and over. So let's begin, shall we? It was easier for people to be good at something when more of us lived in small rural communities. Someone could be homecoming queen, someone else could be spelling bee champ, math whiz, or basketball star. There were only ever 1 or 2 mechanics and a couple of teachers. In each of their domains, these local heroes had opportunity to enjoy the serotonin-fueled confidence of the victor again.
Do you remember
from the lobster chapter in chapter 1 when he talked about dominance hierarchies?
There was a film, and just because Jordan Peterson does it, maybe the greatest film of all time. Who knows? One of the greatest works in which this character, you probably don't know him because you're not as big of a film buff as me. Uncle Rico just reminisces about his high school football and his greatness and what could have been had coach put him in the big game. Yeah. This sounds like that to me. Everyone in their own small town is a big fish, but when you get to the big city, all the big fish are just really medium or small fish.
Yeah. He continues to go on to say, "It may be for that reason that people who were born in small towns are statistically overrepresented among the eminent." Now,
the eminent?
The eminent, meaning, people who are very well off, or at the very least, they're well respected within their fields.
Do you mean large lobsters with bitches?
I want to explain to you that he then has a citation, which then goes to a paper about literally eminent men of science, written in 1930!
1930?
He cites a paper.
Wait, that was just after polio vaccines and just before Blitzkrieg.
So, the paper you're citing that says very eminent people tend to come from small towns comes from a time almost everyone came from a small town. He does this kind of thing often when choosing what he chooses to cite and not cite.
Appeal to age?
It's not even an appeal to age. It's just cherry-picking information, and he's using an old thing to try and make his argument that is, small towns are more beneficial for people because they allow people to stand out. I disagree, but okay. We have become digitally connected to the entire 7 billion. Our hierarchies of accomplishment are now dizzyingly vertical. So he brings up the idea that since we are no longer living in these small towns, or even if we are, we're connected via the internet or whatever, we have other people, more people than we ever had before to compare ourselves to.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah. I would then ask Jordan Peterson if you're painting this as a bad thing, and as we continue, you'll see he is painting this as a bad thing. Then, Jordan, why did you spend the first chapter and sprinkling it in throughout the various chapters, including mentioning the dominance hierarchies now? Why are you telling these people to look at themselves in a dominance hierarchy and look at every situation as a win-lose within that hierarchy?
It's a zero-sum game.
Vis-a-vis lobsters, as you said in the first chapter, and then in the fourth chapter you're saying, but hold on, don't do that at all because it's very unhealthy for you.
Like we said in our review of that chapter.
Which is it? You can't hold both positions at the same time. You can do it. I mean, You can, but you're a hypocrite.
Sure. So, literally, the idea here is, don't look at somebody else and their success. Don't measure your success based on them. But also, make sure your success is contingent upon being more successful than their success
in the dominance hierarchy.
But you can't look at that.
No.
But how would you?
I don't know. He goes on. This is one of the most Jordan Peterson things I've ever read, by the way. Even the most stunning Hollywood actress eventually transforms into the evil queen on eternal paranoid watch for the new Snow White. And your career is boring and pointless. Your housekeeping skills are second-rate.
Hey.
Your taste is appalling. You're fatter than your friends and everyone dreads your parties. Who cares if you're a Prime Minister of Canada when someone else is the President of the United States?
Only some of those things are certainly true.
Also, Prime Minister's not looking too bad right now.
I throw pretty dope parties. Yeah,
I've been to one of your parties.
It was pretty dope.
I don't like parties that much, but
it was pretty dope.
People seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. There's this. I feel like there's projection here. I feel like there's so much projection here, and that could be me reading into it. But also, he's writing this book. I don't know that this guy. You know how he goes into psychology, right?
Yeah.
Has he ever personally visited one himself?
I don't know.
I don't think so. And if he did, I don't think it was someone he ought to have visited.
Yeah.
Maybe he should have got a second opinion, because the idea that, I don't know, being Prime Minister of Canada when someone else is President of the United States, the idea that, like, your success isn't success because someone else's success is greater. Like,
but that's what he goes on to posit.
Right.
But the problem is the hypocrisy and the inability to connect that with what he has said previously in the book. Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but he holds both views, and it's kind of hard to unpack because they're intertwined in his head.
Right.
So it doesn't really make any sense. You can't. Again, don't judge yourself if you're inadequate. But if you're inadequate, you're not a top lobster.
Right.
So you have to address your inadequacy, which is what he talks about constantly. Be honest with yourself. Accept that you're inadequate. And work towards not being so. Because someone else is more adequate and they're the bar.
Continuing. Worse, critics of it are sort of necessary. There's no shortage of tasteless artists, tuneless musicians, poisonous cooks, bureaucratically personality-disordered middle managers, hack novelists, and tedious, ideology-ridden professors. Tedious, ideology-ridden professors?
What?
He continues, we are not equal in ability or outcome, and never will be. A very small number of people produce very much of everything. I very much disagree with that. That's very Ayn Randian. The producers are being dragged down by the takers. No, Jordan, most people work for a living. Most people are doing their best. We happen to live in a system where the benefits of the produce of most of the population goes to a very small number of people. But that doesn't mean they work.
But I think he
to
means
that proportion.
He means it like, you know, like sure, there's thousands and thousands of mistreated Amazon workers, but Jeff Bezos is the one who gives Amazon to the people. You know what I mean? Like very few people. No, I think what you mean is very few people have.
Right. Again, very Ayn Randian, very super excellent people are the people making society work. All you not working people, stop it. very simplistic black and white view, boy, later on he's going to have something to say about that. Anyway, continuing. In consequence, the self-denigrating voice in the minds of the people weaves a devastating tale. Life is a zero-sum game. Again, this is something you
literally advocate for this. I don't know how to...
In the first 3 chapters.
Also this chapter.
It's only...
Also in this chapter, just not this sentence. Not this paragraph, not this section.
Right.
It'll be after that. It's a zero-sum game.
He also continues, it is for such reasons that a whole generation of social psychologists recommended positive illusions as the only relatable route to mental health. Their credo, let a lie be your umbrella. A more dismal, wretched, pessimistic philosophy can hardly be imagined. Things are so terrible that only delusion can save you.
Can you take a bookmark out of here and put that in here so we can read that again?
There you go.
We're going to read that again later. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, this person is saying, don't follow a kind of psychology which forces you to believe in delusion to survive. This is coming from a man who has said this.
Like, the fundamental axiom that I'm playing with is something that was basically expressed by Nietzsche, and it's a definition of truth. And so I would say, if it doesn't serve life, it's not true.
You clearly have to have a conception of facts and truth that is possible to know, that exceeds what anyone currently knows and exceeds any concern about whether it is useful or compatible with your own survival even to know these truths.
Okay, well then I would say that I don't think that facts are necessarily true. I know that I'm gerrymandering the definition of truth, but I'm doing that on purpose.
How does that track?
Because he's a hypocrite.
Or maybe he's just so brilliant,
right,
that the average person can't get around the thought. I don't have a doctorate, therefore I can't understand.
What a brilliant man it must be to hold 2 such cognitively dissident ideas in his mind at once. We might start by considering the all too black and white words themselves. Success or failure. You are either a success or a comprehensive singular, all over good thing, or its opposite, a failure. You said people's brains melt like lobsters in the first chapter when they fail because they feel like losers.
I think his brain lobster melted.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The conditions of our lives become more and more personal and less comparable to those of others as time goes on. Symbolically speaking, this means we must leave the house ruled by our father and confront the chaos of our individual being. We must take note of our disarray.
Was father capitalized?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't the word daddy, it was father. It's fine. We must then rediscover the values of our culture, the past, rescue them, and integrate them into our own lives. This is what gives existence its full and necessary meaning. So again, when we're talking about him being a Christian conservative who's pushing those values onto people, he's quite literally saying here, and trust me, he'll extrapolate this more as we go on.
Oh, will he?
He is literally saying, growing up is about leaving your household where your obvious...
Like a walkabout.
Where your father was in charge, because of course he was. And then you have to rediscover the old ways that have always worked.
I just imagined,
because they're the values of our culture.
An old Turkish lady in a headdress, or not not a hijab,
right,
but like a handkerchief, and like using a thing in a river to wash her shirts, her husband's wool shirts.
And you know what? If you're a conservative, I disagree with you, but that's fine. But don't pretend this is anything other than that, because that's what it is. It's a self-help book.
It's conservatism.
That's
for conservatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. If Tucker Carlson's name was on the cover instead of Jordan Peterson's, I wouldn't flinch.
I don't care.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
it's the disingenuous nature with which these ideas are being carried through and presented to people.
The only reason this is even listened to by I'm going to say people in our camp, because there's a lot of skeptics out there who fall for this shit really easily. Like, it's probably because he's a doctor, and he just caught that last wave of anti-feminism right when it rode into town, and it's like, guys, like, shake out of it. What are you doing? Just listen to Papa J.Q. and Uncle Hugo. We got you, baby birds.
This is a trend that I'm seeing carried through in a lot of these more right-leaning skeptic groups. And that is, they tend to be very susceptible to following anyone who does appeals to science. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, we use science and research and papers to back up stuff in our movie reviews and things all the time. But
there's a difference between citing and appealing.
Right. Peterson uses very much appeals to science in that he'll pay lip service to science, he'll pay lip service to rationalism, and
he'll often bookend his religious speech with scientific talks. Like later on in this book, in the next section, he'll have a long religious talk, and in between really subjects within that section, he's going to talk about how humans evolved over millions and billions of years to do. Because he knows he's going to lose you if he doesn't circle back around and be like, oh, no, but science, but by the way, Jesus.
He palette-swapped Christian conservatism.
He really did.
And some people are like, okay, I'm on board now. And it's baffling to me.
Yeah.
Continuing. But resentment always means one of two things. Either the resentful person is immature, in which case he or she should shut up, quit whining, and get on with it.
That sounds helpful. That sounds very helpful.
Or there is tyranny afoot, in which case the person subjugated has a moral obligation to speak up. Bear in mind, he just put a dichotomy on literally any sort of resentment. A page ago, he was talking about the dangers of black and white
thinking. What
thinking.
if you resent your child because you weren't able to go to college?
Does
that mean you're immature because you wanted an education but got knocked up and decided to do
No, you would argue that's tyranny afoot somehow, but also...
But who's tyrannical? The child for existing?
See, I would argue it's some sort of maybe put on society to maybe make it easier to make more money so you can afford that kind of thing.
No.
Or maybe make college more affordable. But Jordan Peterson is very against equality of outcome.
Right.
So he's against that. However, this has to be either immaturity or resentment, because those are the only two options.
What I honestly think that is just regret.
It's
why can't someone regret something and resent it at the same time without being immature or experiencing tyranny?
I'll tell you what it is. He's trying to paint anyone who's mad about things.
I know what he's doing, yeah.
When he says either resentful people are immature, in which case they should shut up, he's saying, you SJW libtard cucks. What are you mad about? You have nothing to be mad about. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And if you are resentful, for instance, someone's trying to take your free speech, there's tyranny.
Right.
Anita Sarkeesian is a tyrant with actual real-life power. She got an office at Facebook recently. I saw it. I saw it on the Twitter.
Yeah.
She's this close. This close.
To be in the next Mao.
To be in... I guess, yeah. Mao is better than Hitler, I guess.
Which, by the way, brings us to... part, people have asked us, again, multiple times, why we're reading this book. What does this have to do with religion? This is a Christian conservative book.
I really wish, just pick up a copy, right?
Yeah.
In any way you want, borrow a copy from your incel friend. Okay, that was mean. Borrow a copy from your friend that's not getting laid a lot due to his bone structure. And that's what they believe, by the way. Small caveat for incels. They think their bones are... No, that's really a thing.
That's dumb.
Yep.
Okay.
They have body dysmorphia about it. It's actually kind of sad.
Oh, that's weird.
Anyway, you're alone, and also your friend has a copy. And so grab the copy. Go to chapter 4. What page is this?
102.
102. Start there. Just start there. Right? And read. And then you can go back and get your context that you're worried about, because you've obviously never read this book if you don't think it's steeped in religion. I keep using that term. Steeped.
Well,
it is!
The philosophical study of morality, of right and wrong, is ethics. Such study can render us more sophisticated in our choices, even older and deeper than ethics, however, is religion. Religion concerns itself not with mere right and wrong, but with good and evil themselves, with the archetypes of right and wrong. Again, you can see with his first sentence already, he's setting up.
Yeah.
I mean, you already know what ethics is. Presumably,
Sure.
he didn't have to define ethics for you. Presumably, as a human being who has probably
Right.
even if gone through...
Even if you can't describe ethics in a nice, concise way, you know what ethics is.
He's already saying, ethics is this. Ethics is what morality is. Religion, boom, even higher up on the dominance hierarchy of importance as far as these concepts go.
Do you know what he does here that's pretty sneaky, too?
Yeah.
He mentions Indian texts right before he smash cuts into Christianity for about an hour.
He does the Star Trek thing, which is, what you do in Star Trek is, if you want to do a sci-fi bullshit thing, you say, like Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and Shabadoo, you make up the third one. You know what I mean? So it's like, by putting these in a group, it creates a different message than if you just said Shabadoo on its own, because that means nothing to the audience.
Right, this is exactly why he couches these things inside, like, here's some science over here, here's this other religion over here, so you're an atheist, you're not against Indians.
Right. But what he does is he'll be like, here's an Indian religion, here's blank, and Christianity, and then there's a paragraph describing Christianity.
Right.
He'll only mention the other things. Literally, it could have been a thing he did when the book was done, and then said, I gotta add some other religions in the sentences before I mention the Christian stuff, otherwise this looks too blatantly Christian. Continuing. Religion concerns itself with domain of value, ultimate value. That is not the scientific domain. It's not the territory of empirical description. The people who wrote and edited the Bible, for example, weren't scientists. They couldn't have been scientists, even if they had wanted to be. Their viewpoints, methods, and practices of science hadn't been formulated when the Bible was written. So here again, he's saying, he's paying lip service to science. Science is great. Science is, really helpful.
Right, and they didn't have the opportunity for science.
But in some cases,
it's almost like miraculously, in spite of not being scientific, they came upon these universal truths.
Which isn't the case.
This also implies, like, humans are some mysterious, like
he thinks that
we're like a cosmic sort of ephemeral idea, when really we're very basic creatures that find ourselves complex because we're the most complex organism on the planet. As far as mental capacity is concerned, and so we kind of suck our own dicks in the way, like, and it's basically like, once you really strip away someone's like notions of like the flowery parts of themselves, like really we just want like food, sex, shelter, and happiness to varying degrees. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's like pretty reductive, but you know what I'm saying?
Like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs in psychology, for instance.
It's kind of like that. But this, it makes it sound like, sure, you want those things,
but don't you yearn
for the satisfaction of
ultimate meaning?
It's leading towards ultimate meaning, because he says being with a capital B. He works towards this buildup of like Deepak Chopra-esque existence. It's not like reading between the lines. It's just what
it's reading comprehension.
If this was like a Lego set, we'd have the foundation set about chapter 4, right?
Yeah.
And now we're starting to do the flowery stuff on top. Like, this is really baseline, basic indoctrination.
Religion is instead about proper behavior.
Ah.
It's what Plato called the good. Shout out to Plato. He's secular. That definitely means that this is that.
Yep.
A genuine religious acolyte isn't trying to formulate accurate ideas about the objective nature of the world, although he might be trying to do that too. He's striving instead to be a good person. It may be the case that to him, good means nothing but obedient, even blindly obedient, hence the classical liberal Western Enlightenment objection to religious belief. Obedience is not enough, but it's at least a start, and we have forgotten this.
Do you hear that? To God, by the way. Obedience to God, not to nobody.
Yeah.
Because it's a religious zealot, he called him?
Yeah.
Or something to that effect.
It was
a religious, like a really hardline religious person. Obedience is a start.
The blindly obedient.
Blindly obedient. That's a start. We should build from blind obedience. Guys, we're not putting words in his mouth. The fact that you keep denying this is actually insane to me. It doesn't make any sense.
It is therefore necessary and desirable for religions to have a dogmatic element. What good is a value system that does not provide a stable structure? What good is a value system that does not point the way to higher order? And what good can you possibly be if you cannot internalize that structure or accept that order? Not as a final destination necessarily, but at least as a starting point. Without that, you're nothing but an adult 2-year-old without the charm or the potential. So if you're non-religious, Jordan Peterson thinks you are an adult 2-year-old.
You are mentally equivalent to that. I wonder why his fans are so obstinate when it comes to criticism.
Does that mean that what we see is dependent on our religious beliefs? Yes. And what
wait, what? One more time for the people in the back?
Does that mean that what we see is dependent on our religious beliefs? Yes. And what we don't see as well.
Oh.
You might object, but I'm an atheist. No, you're not. And if you want to understand this, you could read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, perhaps the greatest novel ever written.
Raskolnikov!
Yeah. In which the main character, Raskolnikov, decides to take his atheism with true seriousness, commits what he has rationalized as a benevolent murder, and pays the price. You're simply not an atheist in your actions that most accurately reflect your deepest beliefs. Those that are implicit, embedded in your being, underneath your conscious apprehensions and articulatable attitudes and surface-level knowledge. You can only search out what you actually believe rather than what you think you believe by watching how you act. You simply don't know what you believe before that. You are too complex to understand yourself.
That was word for word Jordan B. Peterson, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson of the Toronto University. Those were his words.
It could have come out of Ray Comfort's mouth.
I did a poll on Twitter, and there was confusion and debate over this. Most people voted for Jordan Peterson because earlier in the day, I said, I'm working on Jordan Peterson today. Yeah. So some people were keyed in. But even with that, 2 of the people I talked to after saying I'm doing Jordan Peterson thought it was Ray Comfort.
That doesn't shock
me. And I
me.
think they're both smart people, so it's not like they were just aloof. Like, it's fucking... The fact that... Like, is it an Islam prophet, or is it Jordan Peterson? That's not because it's not close. It's because it's close. Like, can we just talk about this for a little bit? This exact thing.
He's literally saying, and he talked about this a little bit in the debate he did with Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah.
He believes...
He's talked about it several times, but the Dillahunty one was probably the best discussion about it.
Jordan Peterson literally believes that if you were a true atheist and did not believe in God on a fundamental, true level...
Correct.
As much as he understands anything to be true, I guess.
Well, truth is that which helps you survive.
Yeah. He says that if you were an atheist, you would go out and just murder people. This is like...
Benevolently so.
This is like...
You would murder evil people.
Sure, even that. Whatever.
Because in Raskolnikov's case, if you don't know there's a truly evil person. She's shown to be truly evil in every way. Okay. Basically, it makes the world better if she's gone.
Sure.
Objectively.
Right.
According to the book. And then he kills someone and he feels regret.
Right.
And that is Jordan Peterson's evidence. That is his actual evidence that he uses to argue against the idea that people can be atheists.
A fictional character in a book that's being used to highlight other issues anyway. He thinks you're not an atheist unless you murder people. He's a presuppositionalist.
Because you have to be... With atheism comes nihilism, I guess. He's a presuppositionalist. This is literally Cy 10 Bruggencate. If you're familiar with him, go watch any just 5-minute Cy 10 Bruggencate clip on YouTube. Seriously. Pause the video right now, type in SYE 10, figure out Bruggencate, and you'll... Honestly, once you get to Cy 10, you'll be there. And just find a 5-minute clip and listen to him for a minute. You can't be an atheist because you don't know everything.
Right.
You can't be an atheist because... Well, you have a moral compass. It's bullshit. Guys, it's bullshit. Please listen. Don't listen to us. Read the book. Listen to yourself after you read it. It was page what? 103?
103.
Page 103 of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for a Better Life. Like, come on. It's super easy. I'm so depressed that there's a portion of our audience still that has been tricked. I don't care if you like Jordan Peterson. I don't care. What I don't want you to do is think he's beneficial or not a Christian or any of the things that he actually is. He's a charlatan. It's what he is. You can still like him. That's fine. But he is the things.
Part of the knowledge so generated is what is encapsulated in the fundamental teachings of our cultures in ancient writings such as the Tao Te Ching, or the aforementioned Vedic scriptures, or the biblical stories. There's the rule of three again.
Rule of three.
The Bible is, for better or worse, the foundational document of Western civilization.
Wait, we're not going to talk about the other two.
No, we're only going to talk about the Bible, because that's what we always talk about.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But why is that?
Because that's what he wants to talk about, because that's why he wrote the book.
It's the foundational Western book.
Yeah. It's the product of processes that remain fundamentally beyond our comprehension.
They do not! The processes by which the Bible is written are very, very openly...
He literally, the next sentence is his explaining how it came together.
It's not a mystery how this came together.
Yep. The Bible is a library composed of many books, each written and edited by many people. It's a truly emergent document, a selected, sequenced, and finally coherent story. No.
It's not coherent. Are you serious?
It's
It's disparate in many different ways. There are two separate creation accounts. Are you kidding me? There's not even corroboration in the New Testament, and I know that you have an issue with the New Testament as far as like the God that's in it, but like it doesn't have corroboration within it for most of it, except some names.
Yep. So, now he's going to go on to talk about the gods of the Old and New Testament, respectively. The God of the Old Testament can appear harsh, judgmental, unpredictable, and dangerous, particularly on a cursory reading, even more so on a very detailed line-by-line reading, let me tell you.
Yeah.
The degree to which this is true has arguably been exaggerated by Christian commentators intent on magnifying the distinction between the older and newer divisions of the Bible.
Do you see how he separates himself from Christian commentators?
I like that he does that. He's one of them.
Okay, so this is going to get into... Okay. We were talking about this off camera. This is, for me, to use a metaphor, this is like when maybe someone's introduced by peers to smoking.
Sure.
And they go, oh, isn't that bad for your health? They go, no, this one's got filters. And they stick it in your mouth and light it. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is fine. Filters do stuff. They protect me. This is the same thing. He's going to give you a kind of a filtered version of Christianity. And what he's going to do here, and we're going to read this word for word. So what he's going to do here is, he's going to say, first, that the two versions that atheists say, so because you're an atheist, you're reading this book, you're an atheist, he already knows you're an atheist. He's trying to get you. He's going to say that the Old Testament God and the New Testament God can't be the same God. Right?
Yeah.
Because we say that they act totally different.
Sure.
He's going to continue this paragraph that you've begun reading.
Yep.
He's going to say that the New Testament God is very nice and kind, and it doesn't really make sense that he's the same. And then he's going to do the greatest thing any apologist has ever done. He's going to say, just believe in them both anyway, as the same person. I'm not making this up. He is going to tell you to believe in both the Old and New Testament gods as if they were not contradictory. Like a pastor. I'm not overselling this. I'm not using...
I've read it already, I know.
We're going to read this. We're going to read this. I want you to pay attention. If you need to, I want you to pause the video when the text is up, read it for yourself, then listen to Hugo, take fucking notes, go home, rewrite those notes, buy the book, get a highlighter, highlight those things, and read it until you understand. I can't make this more clear.
There has been a price paid, however, for such plotting, and I mean that in both senses of the word. The tendency for modern people to think when confronted with Jehovah, I would never believe in a God like that, but Old Testament God doesn't much care what modern people think. He often didn't care what Old Testament people thought either, although he could be bargained with to a surprising degree, and is particularly evident in the Abrahamic stories. Nonetheless, when his people strayed from the path, when they disobeyed his injunctions, violated his covenants, and broke his commandments, trouble was certain to follow. If you did not do what the Old Testament God demanded, whatever that might have been, and however you might have tried to hide from it, you and your children's children were in terrible, serious trouble.
So this is admitting up front,
Sure.
as a good apologist would, because he's changing apologetics a little bit here.
Yep.
He's changing the focus. You admit that, yeah, the Old Testament God's a dick, and I agree. You can't argue against an atheist or a skeptic of any kind, or another religion for that matter, that you're trying to convert to Christianity.
Sure.
And not admit that the Old Testament God is a dick.
It certainly doesn't hold up to the standard of morality we hold today.
Of course not. And admitting that is a great step to get me to hear you out, which is probably what you did, Jordan Peterson fan, which is fine. I don't blame you. He's manipulating you. Continue.
It was realists who created, or noticed, Old Testament God, when the denizens of those ancient societies... By the way, when he says it was the realists who... Again, it's that
Right.
appeal to the rational, the realists.
Appeal to the materialist,
If you're
appeal to the atheism.
If you're an actual rational person, you would believe these things just because it's better for you, even though it's not true.
Yeah.
When the denizens of those ancient societies wandered carelessly down the wrong path, they ended up enslaved and miserable, sometimes for centuries. This is Jordan Peterson victim-blaming
Yeah.
slave groups, by the way.
Yeah.
You know,
I like
when
it.
they do something wrong and you're enslaved in the way that happens.
Yeah, well, here, the Jordan Peterson fan will say, well, he means literal paths. They went the wrong place and they got enslaved.
That's not how people talk, fuck you. Was that reasonable? Was that just? Was that fair? The authors of the Old Testament asked such questions with extreme caution and under very limited conditions. They assumed instead that the Creator being knew what he was doing, that all power was essentially with him, with a capital H, and that his dictates should be carefully followed. They were wise. He was a force of nature. Is a hungry lion reasonable? Fair or just? What kind of nonsensical question is that? The Old Testament Israelites and their forebears knew that God was not to be trifled with, and that whatever hell the angry deity might allow to be engendered if he was crossed was real. Having recessed back through a century defined by the bottomless horrors of Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, we might realize the same thing.
Wow, we just threw that in there.
Atheists, he brings this up in his, like, other talks and stuff, too. He thinks, like, again, much like Ray Comfort and other presuppositionalists...
Hitler was an atheist.
That Hitler and Nazism is an atheist movement, that if you are an atheist, you are inherently nihilistic, and the end road to that always leads in, like, the deaths of millions of people.
See, and because if you're an atheist and you say, no, my life has meaning, then you're not an atheist. You are... religious, you just don't know it. Or,
that's what he says.
Right. You're banking on, or you're using Western culture and values, which are religious culture and values derived from the Bible, to kind of crutch yourself,
sure.
To kind of hold yourself up. Because without those, you would be only a nihilist, and therefore, even if you say you're an atheist, even if you say you don't believe in God, even if you truly don't believe in God, you're not an atheist, because that's...
Because he chooses to define... He just likes to define words however he wants. Sure. Which is funny that he doesn't like when other people change words.
Under Jordan Peterson's definition, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
I'm a bad one, though.
New Testament God is often presented as a different character, although the Book of Revelation, with its final judgment, warns against any excessively naive complacency. He is more the kindly Geppetto, master craftsman, and benevolent father. He likes Pinocchio a lot. You ever notice that?
He really does like Pinocchio. Does he like Dumbo?
I don't know. I'd go Snow White over Dumbo. Over Dumbo or Pinocchio. I don't think Pinocchio is all right. That era of Disney, Snow White wins.
He does.
But you know who else agrees with me? Hitler. He drew
Hitler
the dwarves because he liked that movie.
He did.
He's right. I guess I am just Hitler. Fundamentally, however, he is the god of love. That seems more optimistic, more naively welcoming, but In precise proportion to that, less believable. In a world such as this hothouse of doom! Who could buy such a story? The all-good God in a post-Auschwitz world. It was for such reasons that philosopher Nietzsche, perhaps the most astute critic ever to confront Christianity, that's not how I would characterize Nietzsche, but whatever, considered New Testament God the worst literary crime in Western history. He goes on to quote him. It's not.
Because Nietzsche liked the way that Old God was written as kind of a bastard.
If you want to hear about Nietzsche, just fucking read it. There's better places than Jordan goddamn Peterson to hear about it. Faith is not the childish belief in magic. That is ignorance or even willful blindness. It is instead the realization that the tragic irrationalities of life must be counterbalanced with equally irrational commitment to the goodness of being. It is simultaneously the will to dare set your sights on the unachievable and to sacrifice everything, including, and most importantly, your life. You realize that you have literally nothing better to do. But how can you do this, assuming you are foolish enough to try?
Wow. Okay, so we need to... Okay, so as an atheist, you might say faith isn't a factual representation.
I would probably define faith as that which is believed
without
evidence.
Without evidence.
Because I would argue that's, if I haven't looked it up, that's probably the dictionary definition, or at the very least one of the definitions, others being like a deeply held religious belief, a deeply held conviction.
Sure, it's one of the subsets.
Sure.
So, if we go with the one that most atheists agree with, which is faith is that which is believed without evidence for...
It is literally a childish belief in magic.
It is literally a child... Yeah, it's just that's just what it is. And this guy, Jordan B. Peterson, professor at Toronto University, you know, the one whose dick is in your mouth, he says, no, faith is a good thing.
He continues.
And it's not any faith. It's not just some faith. Have faith in yourself. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No, the faith is in God. The Christian God.
You might start by not thinking, or more accurately, but less trenchantly, by refusing to subjugate your faith to your current rationality and its narrowness of view. This doesn't mean make yourself stupid. It means the opposite. It means instead that you must quit maneuvering and calculating and conniving and scheming and enforcing demands and avoiding and ignoring punishing.
If you don't have faith, you're all those negative words.
If you don't have faith, it's only because you are avoiding punishment.
You know, like a burglar doesn't want to get caught by the cops, so
this is Ray Comfort's,
why would he go into the cop shop?
This is Ray Comfort's argument.
It's barely reorganized. It just uses a few different nouns and adjectives.
He literally said, in quotes, it's not making yourself more stupid, so it's not that.
I
trust everything Jordan B. Peterson says at face value, despite him saying things that he doesn't mean constantly.
Jordan Peterson just told you faith makes you smarter. It makes you more smarter.
And with regard to what Jake said earlier about telling you to believe, yeah. Thinking of all this, realizing all this, you take a risk. You decide that you will start treating Old Testament God and all his terrible and oft arbitrary seeming power as if he could also be New Testament God, even though you understand the many ways in which that is absurd. In other words, you decide to act as if existence might be justified by its goodness, if only you behaved properly. He's literally saying, even though these things are ridiculous, believe them, because it'll make you feel good, or because I think it'll make you a better person, even though it's not true, objectively speaking.
Guys, what did I tell you would happen? That's what I told you would happen. I seriously, if you're still like, no, I'm lonely, which is probably what's actually inside your head, fucking read the book. Read it. Read this. Or listen. Just scroll back and listen again. Actually listen. Don't freak out because someone doesn't like Jordan Peterson. Listen to the words. The only stance you can have at the end of this if you still like Jordan Peterson is, I buy what he's saying. I just buy it. I do. I'm not an atheist. I'm not. You can't be. You genuinely cannot be if you are a Christian. It's the opposite. It's one of the many opposites of atheism. You can't be it. You can't be both. You've got to pick. And that's okay. You can go be that. But don't pretend that you're not. Because you are.
Furthermore, that is communicated by those eternally confusing, glowing stanzas from Christ's glowing Sermon on the Mount, the essence in some sense of the wisdom of the New Testament. This is the attempt of the spirit of mankind to transform the understanding of ethics from the initial necessary "thou shalt not" of child and the Ten Commandments into the fully articulated, positive vision of the true individual. This is the expression not merely of admirable self-control and self-mastery, but the fundamental desire to set the world right. This is not the cessation of sin, but sin's opposite, good itself. The Sermon on the Mount outlines the true nature of man, and the proper aim of mankind, commensurate on that day so that you can live in the present, and attend completely and properly to what is right in front of you. But do that only after you have decided to let what is within shine forth, so that it can justify being and illuminate the world. Do that only after you have determined to sacrifice whatever it is that must be sacrificed, so that you can pursue the highest good. Read that and tell me he didn't read, like, he saw an audience, he was like, there's a Christian conservative audience that would like Deepak Chopra's bullshit, but they're afraid of Browns. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it reads like prosperity gospel. It really does.
It's that mixed with Deepak Chopra bullshit.
Yep.
Appeals to the rational to get your people who like that sort of thing on a very superficial level without any actual respect for, like, when people cite sources, looking at the sources.
I don't know how. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know. And
I don't know how you read this.
It makes me sad, because if you're someone who liked this book, and we're continuing to read, I say like we're done. We got 8 more goddamn chapters to go.
Oh, we're reading all of it, yeah.
But my point is, I understand that a lot of people can be in rough places. This is not the place to go for help. He is taking advantage of you, and I invite you to please take note of that.
I don't even want you to feel stupid.
No, that's not the point.
Yeah, like, it's not like a, ha-ha, got him.
I'm genuinely confounded how you can read this.
Yeah,
and just...
That's exactly my point.
Put on blinders and ignore the dog whistles, the fucking reading between the lines, just the structure
of it is fucking startling to me. The structure, the way that he like builds up these ideas by like sort of filleting one's ego on either side of it by saying, like, it's not your fault, but here's some things you can do to change this shit that's your fault, but it's not your fault.
Right.
You know what's really great? Western culture. You know what's really great about Western culture? It's Christianity. Like, it's not, like, really even subtext.
It's the text.
It's the text. He says it out loud. If you don't understand, like, are you not reading it? Is it an audiobook and you're driving and you're paying attention to other shit, and at the end of the day you read the chapter titles and go, oh, that's good advice? Like, because I can understand that. I get it. You're not paying attention. That's fine. We aren't always paying attention. If this was on audiobook, I'd tune out. I wouldn't be able to hear it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have an agenda. We have nothing to gain by you not being a Jordan Peterson liker anymore. Go like Stephen Molyneux or fucking Mike Cernovich or probably more likely Ben Shapiro. That's fine.
Or see an actual therapist who has your best interests
If you need a therapist, please go see an actual therapist.
Yeah.
And bring up the Jordan Peterson stuff. Bring it up. Bring up what you've learned. And see if they agree. And go to multiple if you don't agree with the first one. Go to the second one.
I've literally shown some of this to my therapist, and she was fucking shocked.
It's armchair psychology, but worse, because it's almost intentionally harmful.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Jordan Peterson fan, I don't want to make fun of you anymore. You give me a lot of reason to. with the no context arguments and the you're not an expert arguments and the
You're right. We should
Part
cite
where
more
you're
papers from the
weebs.
1930s.
The idea that I can't understand it if I'm not a doctor, but they can if they're not, is fucking wild to me. Like it's what's that called? I forget the name for it. It's where
It
you
depends.
think you're an expert
It
when you're
depends.
not.
The Dunning-Kruger effect?
Dunning-Kruger.
No,
It's-
that's when... Right?
Yeah,
That's when
it's-
people think they're smarter than they are.
Yeah, it's very Dunning-Kruger-y
Or-
with this with the Jordan Peterson fan base, because if I don't understand, they get to be like, well, you're a small lobster. You know what I mean? So like, pretend I'm not a lobster. Pretend I'm
A human being.
Lobster Tube. You went to Lobster Tube and you
Okay.
clicked on a video to hate fuck it. But just pretend that I'm not a peer of yours that you have to overcome. Just pretend I'm an objective sort of blank space, right? And just hear me out. At the end of it, you can recognize my biases, because I have those. You can recognize the fact that I don't like Jordan Peterson or his message. That's fine. But do it after. You know what I'm saying? Like, do it after the fact, after you synthesize the actual information in this book, and then still come to me with the same bullshit. I don't think if you're listening you can. I don't think so.
Knocking door Jesus doesn't make me feel better.
Movie makes me feel better.
Does Mike Myers' head from Austin Powers make me feel better?
I have a Donald Trump bobblehead around
Yeah,
here
it's in
somewhere.
your kitchen, I think.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Facing out the door. Out the window.
People send us stuff. Anyway, speaking of which, here's our P.O. box if you want to send us anything.
Send us coins to put in movie.
So I guess that's it. You can always follow us on Twitter at Papa Bird Jake.
You can follow Hugo at Hugo Reloaded. You could also subscribe to the channel. You can also check out the Now What podcast with Arian Foster. Our episode on there just aired. We flew down to Houston and talked with ex-NFL running back and current rapper, who was very good. Arian Foster had a fantastic time. About an hour and a half cut of shit. How long did we talk?
Like
I don't
2
know
hours?
I don't know how much of it was recorded
Yeah.
that we talked. We sat in that studio for a good 3 hours, and we were also recorded our chick track there before we even hung out. But like, it's a really, really good listen, and I think you're really gonna like it. And the Now What podcast is just good. We have been on a podcast that has also featured the likes of Snoop Dogg. Reggie Bush, another former NFL running back. His mom, Arian Foster's mom. So yeah.
I guess that's it. If you want, you can support us on Patreon.
Yeah, do that, and it helps out a lot. You get access to letters from us and stuff, and we hand sign some stuff. Got some stickers coming your way, and we gotta do a live stream soon.
I know. We will. Until next time, I'm Hugo.
Jake.
Hugo and Jake. You think this is the one where they'll be like, oh okay, he is a...
No, are you kidding me? They didn't listen to a word I said.
Nah.
I appealed to them. I genuinely appealed to them, and they were
fair-
just like, you know what? He's a cock.
In fairness, I tune out when we start talking too.
I'm gonna get someone saying I'm a lady as if it's a bad thing. Maybe I'd be a very pretty woman. You don't know.
What's that? Pretty woman. Strike.
She's a whore, right?